So you probably have seen a lot of the reporting about protests happening on college campuses across the country, particularly last academic year. Obviously, they go back further than that. College protests are a pretty kind of common thing, through the history of colleges. If you go back to the 1960s and 70s, obviously there was a lot of protest around the Vietnam War, civil rights, and so forth. Obviously, very tragically resulting in deaths, such as at Kent State. But college protests are a pretty common thing, but it's gotten a lot of coverage in the media in the last year or so because they've been very intense kind of protests and have attracted a lot of commentary, a lot of interest on all sides of the question, both sides of the political spectrum. When I look at that, and I understand kind of the feelings on both sides of those topics, and I don't have a particular kind of strong. Well, I do have strong opinions, but specifically on those topics. But what strikes me more about the coverage and particularly the commentary is how a lot of that commentary about those topics, about those protests, have not been centered around just the protests. They started there, whether or not they're right or wrong, or, is this unsafe, or is this, a variety of kind of perspectives about the topics. But that is that the discussion around colleges have then kind of reached beyond just those protests to a discussion or an indictment about college education, the college experience kind of in general. And that's where I've kind of spent some time thinking about it a little bit more than in the past, just because I see that those conversations and see those protests, and they've happened on the campus that I work on as well, and see how that discussion then turns into this, like I said, kind of an indictment about whether or not college education is worth it anymore. And, the impact of college and college graduates, college faculty, and so forth, kind of on the greater society. And it's like, why has that happened? And because when I think about kind of those protests, let's put this into some context in terms of the scale. So in the United States, we have 3,500 post-secondary educational institutions, colleges, universities, community colleges, 3,500 of them. At those 3,500, there's around 1.5 million college professors, part-time, full-time, teaching, 10-person graduate classes to, 1,000-person, undergraduate classes. And being taught by those 15 or 1.5 million professors are slightly around 19 million college students, graduate and undergraduate students. So when you think about that number, 19 million, and it's projected to continue to go up, 19 million students with 1.5 million professors at 3,500 college campuses, when you watch the news and see the news revolving around maybe a couple dozen college campuses, maybe more, maybe 3-4 dozen, maybe 50 colleges. That's 50 colleges out of 3,500 of them. And, even if there was 10,000 students, which is a huge number, but even if it is 10,000 students, that's a small drop to the, 19 million students. Now, granted, 10,000 students, spread across a bunch of campuses would certainly have an impact on the environment, but that doesn't speak to the experience that the vast majority of college students will be having and do have on a daily basis when they're on campus. And the same thing can be said about the professors. Even if there's several hundred college professors who take an active role in a protest, that's still a small percent, an extremely small percent to the 1.5 million college professors who do teach. And so I just bring that up because I think the fact that these protests have happened have provided a vehicle for a lot of discussions about college campuses and the college education. And believe me when I say that there are certainly really strong reasons to criticize college, the college experience, not least of which is, the expense of it. It's got out of hand in many universities, but it's not something that can't be managed, by the choices that, a student and family make about where to go to college and how to do that. And then there's other reasons. There's a lot of bureaucracy in colleges. Not everyone, but a lot of them, there's a lot of bureaucracy. So there are plenty of reasons to be critical about colleges, plenty of reasons. But to be able to, but to make that argument that look at these protests and I vehemently disagree with that protest. And so because of that, college education is useless. It's like, how did that kind of connection happen? That just doesn't make any sense to me. And so that's, what frustrates me, because when I look at the experience that my several thousand students that I've had in my career and the dozens and dozens of, professionals, faculty, academic advisors, career development advisors that I've interacted with over my, more than 24 years teaching, from a community college to a smaller state university to most recently a large research-based, public university. Those professionals care deeply about their students. And the students, and certainly there are students who don't care, but the vast majority, or almost nearly all of them, deeply care about their education, investing time, trying to learn, care about being prepared for a career. And even though a lot of them may not know what that career is going to look like yet, and it certainly will change, but it just frustrates me when that value and that dedication by professionals is somehow called into question because of some protest on a few dozen campuses. I just don't see that connection. You want to criticize colleges. Like I said, there's reasons to do that, but that's not one of the reasons to point at a very small, tenths of a percent of faculty, tenths of a percent of students and say, aha, that's the reason why colleges, are hurting America and somehow. I just don't get that. And that this is a reason why you shouldn't get a college degree, because you're not going to be prepared for a career. I don't see that. And so, I say this, I make this my own commentary here because, if a soon to be future college student or, a junior or senior in high school is thinking about college and their parents are trying to work with their kids about making that decision, I really want those people to be able to understand that these protests are a very, 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 very small percentage of the overall college experience. There are serious, hard questions that need to be asked about where you're going to go to college and what that experience is going to look like. But you shouldn't be worried that those protests are going to define yours or your children's experience, because it just simply won't. You've got that child, that college student is going to have a tremendous amount of engagement, or hopefully they will have a lot of engagement if they put the effort into it, with dedicated professionals, with other students who care about their own education and can grow, together. So just as you're thinking about it and trying to decide, don't let that noise interfere with making decisions that are right, because I believe for the right student that a college education is a tremendously valuable beyond just preparing for a career, but just growing as, a citizen, as an adult, as an individual. And so invest the time and you can get a tremendous amount of value out of a college education.